Yeah. Yeah, and you can, yes, one of each. Even a hat.
Whoa.
Okay. So according to so according to my clock, it's 3 o'clock. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Okay, so let's see. Nate, do you want to test the sharing of the screen? Awesome. Thank you. And I see we'll have people walking in, dribbling in. And so thank you everybody for coming today. I know it's an unusual day for us to have a Coastal Resilience Committee meeting, but I'm very excited about the opportunity for us. Oh, please come in. I'm very excited about this opportunity for us to meet with the University of Rhode Island's Coastal Institute to discuss the possibility of Block Island becoming a climate response demonstration site for them. And they will tell us what that means and what the parties are required to do in a partnership, and we'll find out a whole lot more about what it is. The reason that the Coastal Resilience Committee is so interested in this is that we really are trying to attract research to Block Island. We can't answer all the really hard questions that we're facing unless we have good science behind us. And so it's been remarkable in the last couple of years, the number of scientists who have made Block Island a site of investigation, and with that number is growing. I think a lot of that is credited to Brian Oakley, who has really been talking up the research that he does out here, the geology of the island, and that's what it takes, is having an interested person, and then a committee like this that's full of interested people, and a community like you guys of interested people that really attracts the people that we want to do the science we want to have done, so that we can make some tough decisions in the future, hopefully not soon. So I am going to invite Nate to get started, and you guys can all introduce yourselves. Please, everybody, including the people who get up and speak at the stand, either stand, please make sure the green light is on when you're speaking into the mic. And these mics, I don't have to because I speak so loudly, but you kind of have to eat the mic if you're soft spoken. So, oh. So anyway, Nate, please go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks, Judy. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name's Nate Vinatero. I'm the science director at the Coastal Institute at URI. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Elin Terrell, who's the director of the Coastal Institute, and Jackie Wittersheen, who is a marine research specialist. And we have a short presentation today about a little bit about the Coastal Institute, what we do, what our mission is, the type of work we support, and then about one of our sort of flagship initiatives, which are called climate response demonstration sites, of which we are interested in expanding to Block Island. So Elin and I are going to kind of tag team this presentation. She's going to start us off and introduce you all to the Coastal Institute, and then I will take over. And then we're really hoping that we followed this with some fruitful discussion, answer questions, and go from there. So thanks for having us. And thanks for the tour today, Judy. That was excellent. Do you have your...
Yes. Okay, so the Coastal Institute was formed at the University of Rhode Island in the late 1990s, and its mission is to catalyze research and foster partnerships and stimulate dialogue really around coastal and marine science and the community engagement, and things like that. It's let me see. Okay, so we're as an organization, we really work more to bring other people together. So we don't do too much research on our own, although we all are researchers, we all do some, but our mission is more about bringing researchers together and support them. So we have a network of over 230 senior coastal fellows, which some are scientists, some of it are policymaker, extension agents, and so forth. And we do a bunch of activities that centers around supporting those fellows. Part of that is providing grants. Um, Part of it is supporting proposal development, and then we have the climate response demonstration sites, which Nate will talk more about. For fostering partnerships, we support a bunch of either state or federal partnerships. So, for example, we're the host of what's called the North Atlantic Coast Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit, or the NACCSU in short. It's a partnership now of over 40 non-federal partners and 10 federal partners. And we are also the host for the, what is it called? The Scientific Support for Environmental Emergencies, which is a partnership between University of Rhode Island and DEM. And then we do some other support to more community groups. And for stimulating dialogue, my colleague Jackie, she does a lot of work on sort of science communication. So how do we communicate important science, and how do we engage communities in sort of creating a dialogue on these important topics? So the organization of the Coastal Institute, there's only 4 of us that draw a salary from the Coastal Institute. It's the 3 of us and our assistant director, Amber, but we are like a big network if you include our coastal fellows and our associate directors that are faculty at URI, and so forth. So we're like just the tip of a little, I don't know if I call us a mountain, but the tip of a little hill, I guess. So I think I'm gonna maybe, or well, we do student mentorship, which is a really something we really like. So we have both, what we have an emerging coastal leaders program where we award, it's like a competitively awarded program that we do every year, and then we have interns that work with us. All right, now I'm handing it over to Nate.
Okay. So yeah, we do a lot of support for research at URI. We also issue small grants. We do get involved in research projects ourselves as individuals at times. And then we also have sort of a portfolio of projects at the Coastal Institute that we work on that are sort of our own. And the largest of these, I would say, is this climate response demonstration site initiative. This is a program that was started about 10 years ago under the previous director of the Coastal Institute. And it really is designed to support targeted research at select locations, pilot areas that demonstrate climate adaptation practices. And these are areas in and around coastal Rhode Island and Narragansett Bay. So the first of these was in Napa Tree Point, where we've been partnering with the Watch Hill Conservancy. And that area, we call it our natural area, is really looking at impacts of storms on natural systems and kind of how systems respond from large storm events when you leave them alone, essentially. So we've been supporting some of the monitoring programs down at Napa Tree, some of the work that Brian has been involved in with eelgrass mapping, monitoring the lagoon system down there as it evolves. The second site that we started supporting demonstration activities at was in the Port of Providence. And that was focused on industrial port resiliency. That sort of has since evolved into other work. So we don't do a lot of direct work with that group anymore, We have, however, been working with a team at Roger Williams Park, which is now our urban watersheds demonstration site. There, we are partnering with the Nature Conservancy and the Providence Stormwater Collaborative, or Stormwater Innovation Center. And the focus of that work is really kind of more on urban water flows, stormwater management, cyanobacteria issues that they have within the interconnected pond networks there, which are all connected, eventually to the bay. So that one is really sort of pollution and water quality focused, and a lot of public education. And then the other site is in Bristol County. It's what we call our mixed use site. And that one really we've been working with the municipalities themselves. So the planning departments of the towns of Barrington, Warren, and Bristol. And that has really focused a lot on modeling, mapping, to understand vulnerability of those communities to sea level rise. They are very low-lying communities. There's a lot of kind of mixed use right on the coast there, including large expanses of salt marsh habitat, and then also plenty of businesses, homes, et cetera, that are exposed to sea level rise. So these are our three sites currently. They all look a little different. They all operate a little different, but all of them are employing some sort of place-based approaches to managing climate change. And those approaches, sort of reflect specific characteristics of the local environment and the population. At each of these, we have a lead partner. I mentioned the Watch Hill Conservancy over at Napatree. In Barrington, Warren, and Bristol, it's the municipalities themselves, and Roger Williams Park, TNC, and Stormwater Innovation Center. So what we do, as Elin mentioned, we have this network of senior fellows, and our role is to really try to connect URI faculty, URI students with interesting climate-related research at each of these sites. We do this by providing some funding opportunities to our senior fellows. We try to act as a convener where possible, hosting workshops or events, or just sponsoring outreach activities for these events, developing student projects, and then sort of trying to holistically organize a lot of the activities that are going on at these sites under one kind of framework. So I've just got a slide for each of these, the current sites, that kind of gives some examples of the recent work or activities that we've supported at each one. At our natural area, Napatree Point, water quality monitoring. We've done some community engagement and promotion of some educational programming for them. In the last year or so, the URI Environmental Data Center collected a lot of new drone LiDAR elevation data there that we helped to fund. Ongoing surveys for shorebirds and other coastal biological monitoring programs. And basically, our role there is to help support this long-term ecological research that's happening at Napatree. Bristol County, it's much more working with the municipality itself. We have more recently been working on projects related to coastal access in and around Bristol County. There's a lot of opportunities for public access to the shoreline up there. We've helped host some walking tours that highlight different coastal access areas. We have worked with students, a couple of different students, to develop maps showing vulnerable infrastructure for those communities, and those have been used not just in planning or hazard mitigation plans, so forth. They've actually been leveraged by these communities to get more funding for actual infrastructure and municipal resilience grants, things like that. And then up in Roger Williams Park, as I mentioned, the focus is really on water quality and these interconnected series of ponds in the park. So there's a host of activities here that you can read through. But we really in Roger Williams, we really kind of rely on our partners up there to do a lot of the programming. We provide funding and some outreach at different events. So what we've found now, having run this program for about a decade, is that at the more mature demonstration sites, the fact that there is this coordinated research or umbrella for research has been really helpful as these communities or groups try to get more funding or more interest in research in their areas. So a few examples here of just, I guess, how the demonstration sites have been what I am calling a force multiplier for research and investment in the last few years. So obviously we've been successful in getting URI researchers to go and address real problems in Rhode Island, and to connect students with municipalities and other groups that are working on to address local climate challenges. A couple of years ago, we at the Coastal Institute were successful in a new planning grant opportunity that Rhode Island Sea Grant had in the East Bay, and a lot of that leveraged the existing programming in Bristol County. Just in the last year or so, there have been two very large National Science Foundation research grants awarded to research teams at URI. These are multi-million-dollar projects. Each one of those is based on a demonstration site location. So one in Roger Williams Park and one in Warren. And those projects were definitely able to leverage this sort of long-term research investment to help them win those awards. And then, as I mentioned, the municipalities themselves have been successful in applying for various infrastructure and resilience funding. You may have heard of the Market to Metacom project in Warren. That is sort of a very forward-thinking kind of community relocation due to sea level rise in their downtown area. The Bristol County collectively was successful in getting a grant through statewide planning to look at vulnerabilities and solutions to infrastructure, vulnerabilities in infrastructure along Route 114 in the East Bay. And then there's other projects that DEM has funded and DOT up in that part of the state. Another sort of important aspect, or I guess advantage, of having this research focused in pilot areas is that we at the Coastal Institute have developed these sort of different platforms for sharing information about this. So I don't know if this is going to work, but I did have linked. I probably have to stop sharing my screen and reshare. If you go to our website and just find the climate response demonstration site page, what you'll come up with is a little panel that describes each, and these are each ArcGIS story maps, which synthesize a lot of the research that and outreach and so forth that we have supported at each of these sites. So I am not going to go through these right now, but I invite you to check them out at your leisure.
It's a really good website. I got a lot of good information on it. It's easy to read, very accessible. Unlike, some websites that are really dense, this one was super easy to read and access.
All right, so this brings us to why we're all here today. I actually had a conversation with Brian maybe a year and a half ago about the different initiatives that I was aware of going on out here and that he was a part of as well. And sort of this started to, ring home that this could actually be an excellent case study, a demonstration site for the unique vulnerabilities that island communities face. So this isn't just about Block Island. This is just like each one is not unique necessarily to the location, but it is unique to the circumstances and the geography. So this kind of lists a start at some of the research focus areas that we've identified. Obviously, the entire island is all connected to the coast. There's a lot going on here. Really interesting things happening around bluff stabilization on the island and the potential consequences of that, I think, would be interesting to investigate a little bit more. Obviously, threats to coastal infrastructure, what happened during Hurricane Sandy to the roadways near the beach here. Work being done right now to look at natural and nature-based features and how those can be used for coastal resilience, work that Annette Grilly is leading at URI. There's the whole issue, obviously, with everything that comes over here basically has to come on a ferry. And so it's not just reliance on the ferry port at Old Harbor, but it's also reliance on Galilee. Issues with water use and availability that can be a challenge on an island, and so on. So we envision this, that I mentioned at each of these sites, we have kind of a local partner. So we would envision partnering with the Coastal Resilience Committee, possibly others. It doesn't have to be a single entity. And it seems like there are other groups on this island that would fit as potential co-partners as well. But I don't think we would embark on something like this without the support of the Coastal Resilience Committee and partnership there. So I just wanted to also point out that there are already several senior fellows of the Coastal Institute that are involved either in active research programs on the island or recently involved in active research programs. So I know you just had Annette and Stefan Grilly out here last month talking about the work that they're doing on Crescent Beach, modeling work. Malcolm Spaulding, obviously, he's a emeritus professor in ocean engineering, developed storm tools and recently developed storm tools and the associated SIRI modeling products for the island. Tom Boving is in the geosciences department at URI. He's done some work on water use and availability with a graduate student out here. And Amelia Moore and Madison Jones have a really interesting project working with the Manasian tribe to develop what they're calling an augmented reality. Well, it's an augmented reality program that kind of tells some of the history of the tribe on the island. So this is using smartphone technology to go to a place and it sort of has a augmented reality view of what that place looked like that tells you the history of that place based on the indigenous history of the island. And then, of course, Brian Oakley supporting a range of research on coastal dynamics out here. So this is, I'm going to leave you with this slide deck so that you have our contact, the link to the demonstration site page. And before we get to the discussion, I did want to show you, I've been working with a graduate student, a MESM, URI, Masters of Environmental Science and Management student, to develop a draft of a new story map, which would be the story map that is based on the Block Island demonstration site. So I'm not going to go through all of this. There's a lot of information here. He was very thorough, and this is still in draft form, but it's got a pretty nice background information about the geologic history, some swipe maps that show how dynamic the shoreline is, some information about the island itself. This is a really interesting map that he developed that kind of pans around the island to different areas where we've identified climate challenges. And then a section on these various projects that either are being undertaken at URI or by the Coastal Institute senior fellow partners like Brian. So actually, you might recognize yourself in some of these photos. This is a great little map that it's for those of you that participate in the volunteer beach profiling program. This is a nice little map that identifies the sites. You can kind of click on each site. It's got information and profile plots for each one. And then more information down here related to the Grillies project, so on and so forth. I'm going to skip through this and just let Brian take over for a minute to describe a project that we put in here. It's not funded yet, but if it does get funded, it'll definitely become part of this demonstration site.
Sure. Thanks, Nate. So, hi, everybody. I'm Brian Oakley. I'm a professor at Eastern Connecticut State University and a senior fellow with the Coastal Institute. I've been working with these guys for probably about a decade and a half as related to projects with the CI. So yeah, Nate mentioned we just finished a fairly large grant proposal to look at sediment and bluff dynamics around the whole island and try to codify a lot of the work we've been kind of picking away at the last few years. It had a bunch of different objectives, but kind of the big overarching ones were to update shoreline change maps for the island, not just from the current maps, which are 1952 to 2016, which are good because I mean, I made them. I think they're good. But we'd like to go back further to 1886 maps to modern and updated aerial imagery, including the impact of the recent storms the last few years, but also bring in bluff crest mapping as well. We haven't done that. We've done it in fits and starts, but not systematically around the whole island at a really high level of detail. So that would allow us to look at how the bluff has changed at the century scale, but then also look at LIDAR, which is airborne data collected. It's called light detection and ranging. Use lasers flown from an airplane to make a topographic map. And we could really look at how things have changed in the shorter term. That would be like 2011 to present, but also look at some seasonal changes with another partner from URI, Jason Parent, who's a professor there, to use a drone-based LiDAR to cover some selected sites that we've been working on the last few years. And then finally, to make the data publicly available. A big part of Sea Grant's mission, this would be hopefully funded by Sea Grant, is to get the data out there publicly. So we would envision two different products. One would be a website where you could pull up the beach profile data that we've been collecting now for more than a decade and look at it and plot it. So Nate has some static figures up there, but you could make your own plots and look at the data, but also to make a web portal, essentially what we call an ArcGIS hub, where the spatial data, the shoreline change data, the bluff crest data would all be available publicly and available for the town, for the committee, for public stakeholders that are interested. It's a fairly large project. It's a lot of personnel time to pull that project off. So we submitted that Wednesday to Sea Grant. We will hear back in August. Obviously, we have fingers crossed on two things. One, we did submit a pre-proposal. We got a strong encouraged to move forward score, which meant we should write the full proposal. But we're obviously hoping, A, we get funded. And if we get funded, that NOAA and Sea Grant actually still exist, not just in 6 months, but in 2 years to actually fund the project. But it would be a 2-year project starting in the spring of 2026, going through January of 2028, working on all these dynamics. And part of what I did mention, part of the bluff stuff would also be to look at sediment volumes in it. So how much sediment comes out of the bluff when it erodes, because a big part of the story out here in the coastal dynamics is the sediment on the beach came from the bluffs. And so as you look at issues like putting in shoreline protection structures on bluffs, you're limiting the supply of sediment to the beach, at least for that one small portion of the bluff. So being able to quantify that this segment of the shoreline has contributed X amount of sediment to potentially to the beach system over time would be one of our goals out of this, which would involve mapping or doing some grain size analysis on both the beaches and the units in the bluff. So all of that would be done by obviously by the project team, myself, Nate, Jason Parent at URI, and Meredith Metcalf at Eastern, but also a host of undergraduate students at my institution and some graduate students from URI. So fingers crossed, we hope to be doing it. And if not, we went through the exercise saying, well, if we don't get funded, we have this ready to go and we can start looking at what actual pieces we can go elsewhere for funding for. But we're not stopping working here if we don't get it, but it would allow us to move everything forward in one big jump in a few years. That's the goal.
So that is pretty much all I have. I've got one more slide that just has a few sort of discussion points if we want to go further on this. One of the things that we would be looking for from the CRC is eventually some sort of letter of support. And that will basically just help us as we start to seek additional funding for the demonstration site program. So that's something that we can sort of agree on at some point, hopefully. We'll also
Yes.
be looking to make sure, consulting with the committee to make sure if this does become a demonstration site, that whatever research we're going to try to corral or help focus is directed at what the community wants and needs here.
Yeah, I think one of the really important parts of our job as a committee, the Coastal Resilience Committee, is the community engagement. And so, whether it's, asking questions of the community or, telling people what's going on, that we view that as really essential to us doing a decent job for the community.
Yeah.
And I'll just add, I forgot to mention, for the proposal, we did get letters of support, obviously from the committee, from Scott Cummings at TNC, from Representative Spears and Rhode Island CRMC. So I think you guys have had that. I mean, you described it earlier. I mean, you see the room here. It's not the whole island community, but for the people that are here, it's small but passionate. And I mean, in 13 years of working out here with you guys, I mean, that's certainly the case. There's a small but very passionate group of community members involved in all of these issues. And I think that's one of the reasons it makes the island community so inviting for this thing. As Nate said, we started talking about this a year or two ago. But I think having the community involvement is really key. And I think the people are here to do it. It's just making that connection.
Thank you. So, is there, before I could probably talk the whole rest of the time. So before that, anyone is subjected to that. Is there anything in the audience that comes to mind to you guys? Is there anything that you'd like us to? Okay, Valerie.
So I was looking at one of the slides and it said novel communication strategies, and I'm going to paraphrase, to get people to believe in sea level rise. I would hope, and it would be really great if you could share some of those strategies with us prior to waiting for 2 years from now, because that always ends up being an underlying concern when we're trying to get information out. We don't just want to talk to the people that are already like-minded. We want to meet those other people where they're at. So if we could talk and maybe you guys could share some of what those strategies are, I'd appreciate it.
I think what I was thinking of when I put that slide in was this project over in the West Bay that's being led by one of our senior fellows. His name is Leonard Yui, and he's a architecture professor at Roger Williams University. So he's developed this, it's sort of half art installation and half science education, public art sculpture network at Twisett Marsh over in Warren, which is, if you've ever been there, it's a large salt marsh complex in the Upper Bay, very low lying. And it's all sort of wilderness. There are paths that walk through it. And as you walk along this path, you come to these large towers. And on each tower are various markers that show projected sea level rise for various time horizons. But he's also integrated it into the environment. So there are holes drilled in these pillars, and bees make their homes there, and birds. And it's really kind of just an interesting it's an interesting sort of public education piece. So I think that's what I had in mind when I was talking about that. But we also obviously have lots of different map-based products and visualizations and things like that.
So I think to that, there's two things. One, I think Kim put something in at Mosquito Beach, right? That says that, shows kind of what water would look like 2 feet up, 3 feet, whatever. Hey, did you go 4 feet? I don't remember what we did there. But I think we did take an elevation at Bimmy if Bimmy ever decides that it can go on the side of the building. We have the elevation at the building there. We measured it with GPS really accurately. So we could do that. Maybe, maybe when you finish your resignation tour, Valerie, maybe we could just put it on the side. The water, just where the water will go.
The other thing I would say, Valerie, too, is that if you're looking to communicate with, the younger folks about this, we can work with you on that. It really depends on the audience we're looking at, because we've had to kind of modify what we're doing and what tools we're using. Madison Jones, who Nate mentioned, he's been doing some really interesting communication work that's pretty progressive. But it really just depends on the population you're trying to target.
So we obviously are always targeting the younger kids at
Yeah.
Bimmy, but we do work with adults as well.
Okay.
And with being on the committee here, it's the novel ideas that I
Yeah.
was looking at, because there are certain things, and I can do the GIS, I can do those things. But if there's things outside of the box, and I am aware of Kim's, where she put it, but things that we can get things out in a novel way, so people are kind of excited about learning something new in a different manner. That's what I was getting at. Thank
Yeah,
you.
great.
And actually, that's something that I hadn't really thought about, but that just the educational component and how much is going on at URI that we're not tapping into in that regard. Yeah, that hadn't, thank you, Valerie, that hadn't even occurred to me. Oh, oh, okay. Oh, like I said, you have to kind of eat the mic. And except me, because I'm so loud. Yeah, uh, um, so, is there any, we spent a lot of the morning and early afternoon with these fine folks. We took them all around the island, showed them Crescent Beach and Scotch Beach, Mosquito Beach, the North Light, the dump at the revetment at the transfer station. I was trying so hard not to say dump. That's what I said. The transfer station. But also to Bimmy, to the Black Island Maritime Institute, which is in a position now where it's flooding, the parking lot is flooded at least once a year. And in some cases, the water has gotten to within millimeters of entering the building. And then also took them down to the Southeast Light to show them the fog instead of the wind farm. We couldn't even see the bluffs, but they did do the stairs. So we've been trying to, most of these folks are familiar with Block Island, but also to imbue them with the idea that how connected we feel with the geology here, with the sediment transport, with the biology, with just all the science that underpins, it's the hard work that we're trying to accomplish and being resilient to change. So I'm very interested. These guys have been listening to me all day. Just really interested in hearing, if other members of the committee have ideas or, you know, and I'm looking at you in particular, Ann Salinas, because Anne comes to us from a very unique background and probably organized the best meeting that we ever had for our committee, where she had us all sitting at tables and we invited the leaders of the different departments on the island, on the town. We invited the different conservation organizations, some business leaders. We had all these different sort of categories of people, and the ferry, we had the ferry involved, and we spent a half a day really learning about, through her technology, about what we really thought was important to be working on. Because everybody had so many ideas, and how do we actually address so much when we're just a couple of folks? And what are our priorities? And not just our priorities as a committee, but what are the town's priorities? What's the head of public works? What are his priorities? And are we in alignment with that? So, and I was just wondering if you had anything that you would like, that you could see from this partnership that, thank you.
So Ann Salinas, a member of the CRC. I don't know, have you shared like how we're organized into working groups within the committee and what our working groups are? So that kind of came out of the workshop that Judy mentioned, was sort of priority areas. What are the areas that people really think we should focus on? So committee had already come up with a sort of geographic priority areas, which it sounds like you visited most of those, but public education, community engagement is one of them, working with the town on town ordinances, supporting grants. As you probably heard, we have the grant right now that's focused on Core Neck Road, but we've also talked about other areas that we'd like to seek funding to do more studies and eventually implement solutions for, including the BIMI area that you saw today. And we also have sort of liaison roles with different other parts of the town and other efforts going on, like the Energy BIUD, the Conservation Commission, connecting with Galilee and the ferry and whatnot. But those are sort of our main areas of work. But I think overall, like we just, it's just our committee of volunteers, no resources. So everything we do, also we need to get grant funding for, or bring others into to support. So that was a question I had with the demonstrations that you mentioned, that you would have to get funding to, if you did move forward with Block Island. So when you talked about your partnerships, is that where the fundings come from for the other demonstration sites? Like, does it come from the municipalities in Bristol County for that one? Or I'm just curious how you go about getting the funding to do this.
So for many years, we used internal funding. We're not really in a position to do that anymore. But a few years ago, we received a large private donation that is supporting the work at all of the sites currently. And that money's being leveraged to do other things. Like I said, we've also pursued other grant funding that's funded specific activities. But to clarify, our partners are not funding us. We are actually funding activities at these sites.
Okay.
And we're either doing that directly through the University of Rhode Island or through grants that come to researchers that are part of our network.
Okay.
So I don't think that we don't have to wait, I would say, for funding to launch the Block Island demonstration site. We would pursue funding both for direct research and to kind of sustain the demonstration site program in general.
Okay. So I guess the question is what more would be useful from you all after? I mean, I think there's lots of ways that we could collaborate and that would be very useful. I mean, what specifically the focus foci would be, I think is up for discussion, but without a doubt, the need is there, I think, and partnership would be great from my perspective. So, whatever else it is that we can do to support that.
Okay.
what I would say.
So we have first of all, I would say, as you identify needs where research or just engagement outside of programming on the island would be helpful.
Mhm.
That's around the topic of coastal resilience, right? We have to keep it
Right.
within our lane here. But reach out and we'll try to see how we can work on that together. At the same time, we have a little pool of money that we use to fund what we call catalyst and leveraging grants. And those are directed towards the senior fellows of the Coastal Institute. And for the last few years, we've focused that funding exclusively on research that's happening in our demonstration
Okay.
site areas. So in fact, one of the projects that I mentioned about the Manasian history, the
Mhm.
oral history and the augmented reality, that's a project that we
Perfect.
funded through a resilience, through a leveraging grant. And so if Block Island is to become a CI demonstration site, we would probably target our leveraging grants, at least in some part, for activities on the island.
Okay. Great. I don't know if others on the committee have specific ideas, but
Well, I'm excited to hear that, that we can move forward, that we aren't sort of waiting for an NSF grant to come through or something like that. I feel like this is a way for us to really organize, right now we have lots of bits and pieces and this whole even conversation is helping me organize my thoughts and around what we're doing in the committee and sort of, how we can work together. In particular, I think we have a need in helping us do community outreach. All have ideas about it, but it's such an enormous effort, and um, and there's an expense involved. And so, that's an area where we really probably could get some help, maybe from Sea Grant or, one of the other groups that you're involved with that's really good at it. What Anne did was very professional and right down in her lane for what she was used to doing at USAID. But I don't want to burn her out either. I'd rather put Ann in charge of it and have somebody else do it. You know what I mean? Or I shouldn't say it that way. Ask Ann to be in charge and then, but, and have someone else really, help us pull it out, that kind of thing together. Jackie.
I definitely think we can help with that.
Yeah.
So we just would really need to know specifically what you're looking for.
Right.
And how we can leverage the tools and things that we do to help you in that way. Because, we often, Nate and I have both worked with students that can help us with this stuff and they create really great materials and then they can really just be sustained by your committee and, a minimal format, things like that. So I think it would just be around what specific you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's actually would be an amazing student opportunity just to go through the process of developing a meeting and what that takes. I mean, that's just such a great skill that they could then take into any career that they went into from here. So, I think that's something that we would really, whether we pursue it with you or not, we're going to pursue it probably with Sea Grant or somebody because we need help. Yeah. Come on up. Yeah, you have to speak in the mic so that Susie can hear you.
just one question that occurred to me when you all were speaking on the, having students potentially support something like that. Is it limited to the academic year when the fellows would be available, or is it a year-round potential?
So we actually have students that work all year.
Okay,
The
okay.
graduate students particularly,
Okay.
that's usually who we're working with and they
Okay.
usually have summer
Good,
stipends.
because summer is when probably the
Yeah.
need's greatest.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's a URI graduate student that developed that draft story map that we have right now, which I think actually can be a great communication piece. It's not just about a map. It's really more like a website, a place where people can go, and it can eventually be I don't know, like a clearinghouse for information. Yeah, as you mentioned, Judy, there's little things going on here and there, and they don't all need to be connected in through some research framework, but they can, when they're all nested under an umbrella of a demonstration site, it kind of helps you to see how they are connected.
Yeah, but I think what we can envision is with these portals of data access for the profiling and shoreline change maps, they could be linked under something like that. So if that's your landing page for all of this stuff, then it would take you to here's this website or here's this website. Even if they're not all under the same research initiative, they can all be linked under that as an access point.
Nora, you want to come up and talk to us about Story Map? Which looked remarkably like your story map.
Nora Clark, TNC. Yeah, I actually am just next on Tuesday. I'm going to present my story map that I made that actually looks very similar. That you guys have ArcGIS Pro, I don't. So, so my story map looks very similar. But yeah, I think I think all of these ideas are awesome, and I would be happy to be again even more of a partner than the CRC, as I'm not actually part of this committee. But I think continuing just to kind of push all those things and be a person on island that can be a resource to you guys as well. But yeah, I think that.
Yeah, Nora provides a level of technical expertise that does not exist elsewhere in the committee.
That it's thanks, Nora, and that brings up something else that we would, I guess, like to understand is the Coastal Resilience Committee would be our primary engagement partner, but who else should, TNC
For sure.
should be a part of this.
Yeah, and we actually, that would be really fun, a fun thing to do is to bring you together with all the people that we view as our partners out here, the Block Island Conservancy, TNC, the Committee for the Great Salt Pond. You had the BIMI today, a little taste of BIMI today, but there's a lot more going on there, and they're good partners. So there are institutions that are actually executing stuff out here. The committee, our committee is advisory to the town, so we don't really do very much. We suggest a lot, and we try to act as a catalyst for stuff, and do a lot of community engagement, but we don't have any money. We don't have a budget that we execute. What we do is advise the town on how they're executing their budget and what we think is an important investment or not for the town. So puts us in an interesting position, but no problem with writing letters of support. As you know, I've been doing it for years now. Some things I need to get cleared through the town, but some things I don't, like, letters to senators I have to get cleared to the town, but a letter of support for research opportunity, I don't need to do that. So yeah, we have some flexibility also in being just an advisory body. It's both freeing and confining in different measures. Pardon? Liberating, yeah. Is it liberating? Yes. So is there anything from the public or anyone else in the audience that you guys are very quiet? Yeah, come on up, Mary. Come in and introduce yourself, please. Is the mic on?
No, is that better? Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's great, exciting day, all these ideas, especially it's interesting to think about how the website can be used, because we've been talking about that too, in terms of what GZA will work with us, and then, of course, for the town's website. But another thing that just a simple thing came to mind, are you working with any other communities on not just dune restoration, but marsh restoration? Are you now, or do you anticipate doing that in the future in any? I'm sort of thinking of the big project like in New York and Jamaica Bay, that. I just wondered if there was anything going on in Rhode Island in terms of
So within
restoration.
Yeah, within the demonstration areas, I think this was before I was at URI, but there was some work up in the East Bay that that Wenley Ferguson at Save the Bay.
Oh,
would
yeah,
be
yeah,
doing.
yeah.
And it's not like the marsh restoration, like thin layer deposition type
Mm.
stuff. This is
Mm.
more living shorelines or like
Yeah.
marsh grass plantings and removal of hard infrastructure to allow marshes to
Mhm.
retreat inland.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Would you share that with us or
that's what I was thinking of. Walker Farm. Yeah.
walk? Oh,
Walker Farm in Barrington.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is a town-owned property
mhm.
that has undergone a transformation in the last few years.
Mhm.
A lot more public access opportunity there.
Yeah.
There's community gardens and kayak rack stations, boat launch. But there was also a lot of hard infrastructure along the shore that
Mm.
was removed and turned into sort of a marsh retreat zone,
Uh-huh.
for
Oh,
lack
cool.
of a better term.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look up that project,
Okay.
that was one that the town of Barrington essentially
Yeah.
did.
When Teresa Crean was there?
Yes.
She's not there now. Is she in Newport now?
Newport, yeah.
Newport, yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's good examples of thin layer deposition in Quaney Pond and Integrat Pond as well, where they've done fairly large projects, dredging tidal inlets and flood tidal deltas sand and putting it on the marsh.
Mm.
Not the same way. This was very much placement, not spray and pray, as they call it down south,
Mm.
where they just pump it onto there with a fire hose. This is actually dredged, placed, leveled,
Yeah.
and replanted. But it's been fairly successful at doing that. It buys the marsh a few decades, doesn't help it forever. But there's also-
And allows it, sorry, Brian.
Go ahead.
Does it also allow it to migrate
So
to
these
the
are,
same
some of them
idea?
are on the back of the barrier, so there's a little less worry on the migration because the barriers are moving.
Mm.
They haven't done that I know of on the mainland connected marshes in those ponds. They could be, or
Mhm.
they could be in the future doing it. But I will say out of the same Sea Grant proposal call that Nate and I just submitted to, Erin Peck from the Graduate School of Oceanography and
Mm.
her graduate students submitted one as well to do some work on the marshes out here.
Oh, okay.
Our hope is that both projects get funded, not one or the
Yeah.
other. But there would be some connection there because some of the bluff sediment is probably working its way into the marsh system as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully that gets funded. Even if ours doesn't, Erin's, if it does, would be a good resource.
Yeah,
to
I know
tap
Judy
into as
mentioned
well.
that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, the marsh, we've spent so much time looking at the very active ocean side of Corn Neck Road and what's happening on the beach side. But we're just as concerned about the water creeping up on the Great Salt Pond side and impacting the road bed and possibly, damaging our ability to get from north to south and south to north. Get to Ann's house, Ann's new house on the neck. But um, we did meet with Erin and Izzy, the two researchers, and they said, like you did, that even whether the project is funded or not, they want to do something out here. Because I mean, it's Izzy's PhD, so she's going to do her PhD one way or another, And so we were really happy to hear that we would hopefully be included in that. So,
Brian and I had some conversations with them between writing our pre-proposal and the full proposal. And we both agreed to sort of point out the synergies of our project in our proposal, and that both, if funded, would be part of this broader demonstration site effort should it move forward.
thank you. That's amazing. That's really great. Deathly silence. There's so much potential, I know. Kim has never been to a meeting that she hasn't gotten. Oh, I got George.
Oh, is Kim?
Kim is off the hook. I was gonna come. Oh, she got nothing.
Well, I have nothing as well, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Is your light on?
It is on.
Thank you.
Here, how's that?
Perfect. And say your name, please.
George Davis, CRC, BIMI, a whole bunch.
For the Great Salt Pond.
Yeah,
Shellfish.
shellfish. I think I forgot one. CGSP. Anyway, so what are the next steps to us? How do we know what's the process for us becoming a climate demonstration site? What do we need to do? What can we do at this point? Or what do you guys do next? I never quite understood that. but that's okay.
I think we've been preparing to add Block Island as a site for, as Nate said, for about a year and a half now. So for us internally, this was probably the last step for us because we really wanted to make sure that it was something that was acceptable to the committee and the community. So if we say, okay, we have a go ahead, then I think we'll launch it. You know, we're gonna add it to our website, the story map that the student has worked on. You know, we'll put it up there, and then we'll go from there.
And yeah, we'll make this known to our senior fellow network. And that will start to generate some interest, hopefully, in Catalyst research projects out here. So
I would also say too, it will be really helpful to continue to work with the committee to try to refine these ideas and make sure we have a really good scope of work that we can then present to our fellows to be able to get some buy-in from them. That will really help us, figure out how the needs of the town align with our researchers.
I think Nate and I were just saying the same thing. I think it maybe after the crazy season, you mentioned all the work you guys did pulling all these people together. I think getting people in the same room to hear from that collective what the big issues are, right? Because I think as I don't want to say the outsider, but as I'm not the CI staff, I think the ability they bring is to open this up to the larger network of coastal fellows and researchers and say, okay, well, if and I'm not putting them on the spot. If Committee for Great Salt Pond says, hey, a huge research question for us is blank, maybe there's a way to bring somebody in from that. Or maybe it opens it up to, hey, like they said, they can put that out to the network of, hey, there are interests in this. And maybe that's the way you get some connections made to get other researchers out here. I mean, as Judy said, I don't believe any of that is because I've been out presenting this stuff. I think it just happens organically, but I do think it does help when you have other people out there saying, hey, there's scientific questions to be answered out here. And hey, who doesn't like to come out to Block Island to do field work, right? So I think it's a matter of making those connections, whether it's TNC, whether it's the Conservancy, whether it's Great Salt Pond, whether it's town and public works and whatever, but hearing what the big issues are and the big questions data wise are, I think would be probably really useful to open this up to begin to hopefully open up the gates to let other that's not gatekeeping isn't the right way of thinking about it, but allow other researchers to understand that the opportunities and the questions that are to be addressed out here. Right. Maybe it's a landscape architect to look at Bridgegate Square. Maybe it's somebody looking at climate impacts of green crabs in Committee for Great Salt Pond. Right. There's questions certainly to be asked. I think those need to get asked so the CI can start to find the people or put it out to the people that maybe could come do the research.
So here's my question for you. What is the sand budget on Block Island? But that's what I'm telling you. That's the question that's right. That's the question I have. It's like I think one of the most important questions on Block Island, if you care about beaches and bluffs, which a lot of people do on Block Island. So I'm very grateful that it's already on your agenda.
And just to add on to what Brian said, a lot of the research that may be of interest out here is not necessarily, not unique necessarily to Block Island. You can study shoreline change anywhere. So the salt marsh research is a perfect example. They're interested, right, in salt marsh resilience and carbon storage, which you could study in a number of locations in Rhode Island. What's attractive to the funding agencies in particular is when the research is part of a broader pilot area research approach. So I think that's one of the big advantages of calling this a demonstration area.
So just a quick question. Nigel Grindley, I'm on what used to be the Sea Level Rise Committee. I can never remember what it's now called. But so the fellow side of this, I mean, are they self-selecting, or do you ask individuals with particular specialties to get involved? And obviously, we're talking here in the number of sort of issues that you brought up with a lot of different areas. Each of one ideally might have its own specialist. So do you get several fellows involved? Or, I mean, I don't quite understand that practical side of the process.
So, anyone can become a coastal fellow. It's a matter of being nominated by one of the current fellows. So it's not an exclusive network. It's meant to be as large as possible to create, opportunities to collaborate across disciplines, across, between scientists and community members, policymakers. So the core of our fellows, most of them perhaps are at URI, maybe a third to a quarter of our fellows are at URI, but they could be anywhere, really.
Yeah, and of the 230 or so that we have, there's what we have maybe 50 or 60 core research, mostly faculty members that are focused on coastal ecosystem research. But to sort of more directly answer your question, no, it's not self-selective. If there were a particular need for research, first of all, this is a network and we know all these people. So in fact, I think a few years ago, before Annette Grilly was working, was funded through Sea Grant for this project on Corn Neck Road, there was some interest on the island about the topic of artificial reefs. And I think she may have come out here at one point, maybe, and given a presentation. And that connection happened through the Coastal Institute, actually. So a lot of it is just the Rolodex, right, of the Coastal Fellows. But if there were a particular need for research or some sort of community engagement target topic, we could reach out to our entire network, and we would probably reach out to our entire network.
The other thing I would add is that something that we historically have had a good track record of doing is bringing multidisciplines together for larger, multidisciplinary grants and getting a lot of funding. So I know the funding scope in the federal level is kind of tentative, or we don't know what's going to happen, but because we have a lot of connections and because we've kind of broadened our reach, all of our disciplines, even within the Coastal Institute, are all different. So we'd like to think of ourselves as good at bringing people together to get these larger things funded. So, yeah.
So, do you have like Coastal Institute events? I mean, what I mean by that is, a social event or like a lecture series or something where one of us could come and give a talk and and know that we're speaking to the fellows and the students who might be interested in that topic, or is there anything like that?
Yeah, we in the past have organized an annual lecture series. That we haven't done that for the last couple of years. But we do have a few meetings a year, I guess, where we invite fellows to come just to socialize, hear about updates from the Coastal Institute. Those are often designed to try to help bring people together from different disciplines. A lot of the people that we work with are located on 2 different campuses at URI. So one of just sort of the issues is that people don't get the opportunity to see each other as often as they would like. And so we can kind of act as a host for events like that. The other thing that we do is annually we do a field trip for our senior fellows. And we try to take them somewhere interesting where there's some sort of around Rhode Island where there's some sort of interesting coastal issue or problem. I don't think we've ever come to Block Island.
Oh, you're invited.
But this year, we've already started scheduling our event for this year. So this is usually in the summer. But that's not to say that we couldn't try to do another meeting out here.
Oh,
Either-
we aren't particular on which summer. You know,
Okay.
I mean, no, I mean, we want it to work for you too, but we're always are trying to figure out something exciting to do in the summer that we can invite the community to. So, you know, that might, so maybe not this summer, but maybe next
Yeah,
summer.
2026.
Okay. That's a great idea.
That's not going to be a hard one to get people to come to.
That's what I figured.
Hi, George Davis again. I have a question. If I wanted to find out what your fellows are working on, I mean, I'm looking at the grant and aid request. Is this a good start? Because, you know, if I wanted to get a sense of what we could come up with that made sense for what you already have in the hopper, you know, what people's interests are. Where do I go?
So I think the best place is our website. Actually, we have a senior fellow page where you can find all of them.
Mhm.
That is helpful, but it
Good.
is more of an internal funding mechanism. So it'll shows small things that we help fund through certain researchers. So it's pretty specific and maybe not as global, but definitely we have a senior fellow web page and it gives their bio and
All
what they
right, all
work on.
right. Very good. Thank you.
Sorry. This is our homepage, ci.uri.edu. At the top, there's a tab here, Senior Fellows. And this is a list of everybody. You can select folks, talks about their areas of expertise. Some are more brief than others. But this will give you a taste of what the Senior Fellows research portfolios are.
Like I said, it's a really informative website. It's definitely worth a look. We know those people, that's right.
So just to explain also what that grant and aid is, one of the ways that senior fellows benefit by working with the Coastal Institute is they run their grants through our center at URI. And what happens is a little piece of the overhead that goes to the university comes back to us when they do that, helps to fund our operations. And a portion of that actually goes to them. And that's to fund aspects of their research that may not be covered by a grant. It's all sorts of things. It's for sort of, there's discretionary money for them to decide what they want to do with. It buys computers, it funds graduate students, it pays for summer salary, it pays for travel. So that gives you a sense of like the return that we offer to the research network, those dollars.
Nora Clark's TNC still. I was just curious in thinking about like broadening the scope and thinking about different disciplines, like if you either have projects already or this could be something to think about on Block Island of like financial social implications of building in climate resiliency or, you know, doing these things. I think that would just be in thinking about how to broaden the amount of people in this room and tie in more, you know, but more buy-in from the community. I think, I don't know, kind of broadening the scope of even maybe past like true science research, but I would say again, like more financial or social research about what happens when you do talk about this, think about these different tactics with a community. It's just something I was thinking about and wanted to ask.
We do have quite a few researchers that are social scientists and resource economists, but we also have the Coastal Resources Center that does a lot of work sort of more on the extension side, but some of that is also working with communities in strengthening resilience and thinking about sort of the bluer economy more broadly. Like, how do you increase your resilience by diversifying sort of your income stream, for example? Like, yeah, for sure, there's quite a lot of that.
And I'd say a lot of the projects that the Coastal Institute supports or fellows of the Coastal Institute are involved in are interdisciplinary, not just focused on, you know, when I showed some of the areas of research focus for Block Island, I put that slide together. I'm a coastal scientist, coastal geologist. But the two big projects that were awarded this past year through the National Science Foundation EPSCoR program are both interdisciplinary projects. One is led at URI by a geoscientist, a co-led geoscientist, and somebody who's a communications expert. The other is co-led by an economist, geologist, an engineer, and a sort of public engagement specialist. So yes, we focus on interdisciplinary research at the Coastal Institute, and we would envision the work that would be happening in the demonstration site here to be much more than just, beach dynamics, even though that's all we really want to talk about.
So I'm going to ask for any last words. We have just a few minutes before we have to dash these people to the ferry so that we can get the bus back and get Valerie on the 5 o'clock too. So anything burning from the audience? Can't see Arlene. Oh, Arlene's not there anymore. Okay. Anything else that, I can speak for myself. You guys are welcome at any time. Just let me know. I'll squire you around in anywhere. And Brian knows that if required, I can lend you my car. And anyway, just really welcome this opportunity, and willing to do whatever I need to do to make it so.
Great. Well, we'll continue to chat, and
Yeah.
we will definitely be seeking some sort of letter of support. Thank you very much for taking us on the tour today, informing us of all the issues out here, introducing us to the committee. I can't believe we've got bluebird skies right now. We've been in the
I
fog all
know.
day. That's
In the
how it
fog
goes.
all
But,
day.
but that just means we're coming out again.
By the way, the same exact weather pattern when Annette and Stefan were here, the Grillies were here, yeah.
But
Anyway.
thank you very much.
Well, and thank you for lunch. Thanks, you guys, for being here today and participating, and hopefully exciting news to come. We will keep this committee, as long as I'm involved with it, we'll keep seeking to bring interested scientists, interesting social, anything we can to bolster the making of wise decisions based on good information. And so I really appreciate the time that you guys have taken to come out here and spend with us. Thank you, Brian, for being the catalyst for all of this. I know you don't want to take credit, but you got it. And thanks everybody for being here. Our next meeting is going to be on June 3rd, so it's next Tuesday, and it'll be a regular meeting. So with all the committee reports and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much. So I'm going to call it adjourned at 4:17. And I will send you should I send you or Laurel my notes? Okay, I'll send you my notes. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.